And it is my pleasure to welcome the Rev Dr Scott Tilley back to us. We're doing the work of repair, what it takes to come back. And Dr. Tilley is Emeritus Professor at Florida Institute of Technology, President of Big Data Florida, founder of the CTS Ministry, an author and a regular contributor to Florida Today with the Spirituality Today column as well on his Substack. Thank you, Dr. Tilley, for being with us today. We appreciate it.
No, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So before I begin, the topic today is actually part of a broader series which I'll describe to you, but this being Valentine's Day, hence the red shirt, right? Does anyone here want to admit to being in the doghouse today? Yesterday being Valentine's Day? No? All good? You don't need to say I'm sorry to your spouse for anything yesterday? All right. So why are we talking about this? A couple of reasons. Some of you know I've been away from here for a while. In fact, it's almost like I had the 7-year itch. I was last year March 24th, 2019. Yeah. Yep. But as Beth said, I write a newspaper column. Well, some of you know, for like 10 years, I wrote the Technology Today column in Florida Today. But for the last over a year already, I've been writing the Spirituality Today column. Basically, when Norris Burks retired a year and a half or so ago, there was an opportunity, and here I am doing what I can do. And each month there's a particular theme, and the theme for this month, February, is called The Courage to Connect. And I'll describe it to you in a little bit more detail, but it's related to how we connect with one another, either a community, your spouse, your friends, your family, and all different facets of that. This week, part 3, is talking about mending fences, if you like, mending what's broke. And if you didn't know, the column appears every Sunday in Florida Today, so if you got today's paper, you may have seen it already. It was in Sunday's paper this morning. So the question underlying all of this really is the following, is what does repair actually require in the context of not broken but damaged relationships, and what do we do if it's not possible? So if you've not been following along in the newspaper, as I said, the Courage to Connect began the first week of January. And the topic each week is related to the broader month, and was called The Part You See. And it has to do with the fact that when you're in the public eye, people have a certain perception of you, because maybe you're a politician, an entertainer. I'm well known in many places, and people come up to me and talk to me as if they know me. And it's true that they know me, but they know part of me, but not all of me. And that was the focus, which is what you choose to share and what you choose to keep private, and how you have to open yourself up if you really want to have true, deep connections. Last week, I titled it When Words Fail, which is kind of amusing since I'm a writer for the most part. And it has to do with how do you communicate your emotions when you don't have the words to say it. And when I write about these things, I use different aspects: music, stories about my pets, everything else. So that was the focus. This week, as I said, we're talking about the work of repair. Next week, it sounds like you have amazing service with the upcoming Brevard Free Theater. Yes, Free Theater Brevard. I'll actually be speaking at the Other You Church in Pineda next Sunday on the wrap-up of this series, and it's called Tending the Connection. And that is, at the end of this, how do you maintain healthy long-term relationships? If you know anyone who's been married 50 plus years, you can say, how do you do it? Yeah. So the arc is really about vulnerability, silence when you don't know what to say, repairing problems, and then tending the connection. So I want to talk to you about a couple of different facets of this today, which is the fragments of problems that we all carry, how we usually go about trying to address those, which I call the false start, and what I would refer to as the gold in the seams. Now, I hope you have a copy of the flyer I passed out. On the front of the flyer is an image of some pottery with two hands repairing broken pottery, and you can see there's gold threads. So we'll return to that. But that's the metaphor for repairing broken relationships. And then what to do when sometimes repair is not possible. So let's talk about all of us. All of us at some point have had instances where we've had some aspect of a relationship broken. Right? It might have been something you did, might have been something the other party did, something you disagreed with. And you can find evidence of this. You may have this person still in your contact list in your phone, and you just scroll by them. You don't erase them, but you don't really look at them that much. Or you may have birthdays that you remember from someone you're with, but you don't celebrate them, but they do pop up as a reminder. They can also be, for example, with a sibling, a brother or a sister you haven't spoken to in many years, a colleague you had a professional disagreement with, a friend you've broken up with. Doesn't matter what. The result is the same, which is silence. The silence just kind of sits there. Now, that may be something that only you experience. It doesn't mean the other party is experiencing it necessarily, but you do. It's kind of sitting with you. And remember that this is more than just memories. Usually, these breaks in relationships represent something that's unfinished, and you wish you could come to closure one way or the other. But for the most part, we kind of sit on them as openings, just sitting there unresolved. The thing is, most of us, if you went to talk to a therapist, you'd say, you know, how can I resolve this? You know the answer, but we choose not to do it. And the answer is actually fairly simple. That comes back to Valentine's Day. Start with admitting, if it's true, admit you're wrong. Or admit that you were hurt, or that you hurt someone else, or both. That's the hardest part. The thing is, we don't do that. We know it's true, but instead we try something else first. And that is by saying two little words. I'm sorry. Right? I'm sorry. We know this version, however, of I'm sorry if you listen to any politician or person who's been caught with their hand in the till, as the saying goes. That's called the non-apology apology. And for example, 6 words, and I'm sure you've heard these before. I'm sorry you feel that way. They're a performance of regret, not regret. They defend the speaker. So, I'm sorry you feel that way. It fails because it seems like it's accountability, and it's almost the real thing, which is why so many people in the public eye do it. And they may feel it, or they may be disingenuous. There's a variation on that as well, which is, I'm sorry, but you have to understand. Pretty much as soon as you hear that word but in that sentence, you know the sorry part is irrelevant, because they're going to explain away whatever happened. It erases everything before it. There's also a deeper dodge, if you want to call it that, which is sometimes we skip the apology entirely, and instead of that we substitute time. We just treat silence as the resolution. But the thing is, there's a difference between patience and being passive. We might wait for someone to change their mind, and that might be generous, like they'll eventually come around. It's also a way of accepting harm, which is not healthy. The thing is, knowing the difference between they need more time and this pattern is not going to change, think of a conflict with a sibling, is one of the hardest judgments we can make, because sometimes when we make that final decision, that's when things become irreparable. So the question you might ask yourself, if you've had a rift that you're looking to repair, is, are you waiting because you believe repair is possible? or you're waiting because confronting it is too high a price, emotionally, spiritually, economically, whatever it might be. You just want to avoid it. But you can think of an apology as kind of a threshold or a door. Saying I'm sorry and meaning it is not enough. It opens the door. You still have to go through and do something on the other side. Now, ironically, I found a great example of this is from a pop song from over 20 years ago. And if you look on the back of your flyer, it's the song Sorry from Madonna. I'm guessing you didn't expect I'll be talking about Madonna here today. It's a great song. I want to, if I can, on this phone, we'll see if this actually works. I want to play the very beginning for you. So she was basically saying, I'm sorry in 8 different languages. Making sorry and apologizing truthfully universal. We all have different words for it. But the meaning, the underlying meaning is the same. And what follows is very interesting, because this is told from the person of a lady who's been wronged many times. And she's waiting to hear someone to her, close to her, say, I'm sorry, but mean it. But they don't. They're more like, I'm sorry, but blah, 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 blah. And her answer to this is, I've heard it all before. I'm sure you're familiar with that phrase. If someone is always apologizing to you but never doing anything about it, I've heard it all before. I've heard it all before. And at some point, that kind of repetition becomes its own dishonesty. It's a way of getting around the fact that you're not resolving this problem. This particular song, by the way, I mentioned that I approach these issues related to connection in lots of different ways. Besides the newspaper column, which appears on Sunday, on their flyer there's a URL for Substack. Substack is just like a place where people write. And I write something every day related to these topics. And on Fridays, it's music. I also run a music history group, if you want to call it that. Think of like VH1, Behind the Music, from back in the day. And the music for this coming week is Sorry by Madonna. So I picked other songs for the other aspects. So it's a great song. So those 3 words that are repeated again and again, I was wrong, are hard to say. It's no exaggeration to say we will do things like rearrange our schedules, rehearse entire speeches, or go years without saying them. Again, even though you know that's what's necessary to get over this conflict. But they're expensive to say. It risks a complete rupture of that relationship. It opens yourself up. When we come back to knowing your inner self, you're opening yourself a little bit. And you have to know that fractures in a relationship can happen in an instant. You know, when people get caught on hot mic, one thing they say ruins a reputation. But it takes a long time to repair it. Small steps. You can't expect these things to be fixed quickly, right? And that's not in our human nature, really, to know that it's going to take quite a while to resolve these issues. So that comes back to the image which is on your flyer of that pottery. It's a Japanese practice called kintsugi. So in this practice, when a bowl breaks, the artisan doesn't throw it away. They repair it. And they repair it using lacquer that's got like gold in it, actual gold flecks. And it's because the cracks then become visible in the repaired pottery. You can see them, and they were not there when the pottery was whole. And the philosophy behind this is the breaking is now part of the pottery's history. Hiding it would be dishonest. It's not true to the relationship. So the pottery then goes forward with cracks. But the cracks are gold, which indicates they are valuable. They are part of the overall relationship that spans a long time. You also notice in that diagram there's two hands working together. It's not an artisan by himself, it's someone else working to resolve this conflict. And it's patient. If you've ever done any pottery work, you know it's not something you rush. It takes quite a while, just like repairing relationships. So it doesn't mean we pretend the break doesn't happen. In fact, the healthy wing is you acknowledge it happened. And there's something really physical about this pottery, because you actually can physically trace the crack with your finger. You can feel the gold in it. We can't do that with our own relationships, but we can metaphorically do it. And after it's done, both people can acknowledge there was the crack, and we've now repaired it. Now, it would be nice if I said every relationship is like that and all ends well. But there are times when it's not the case, right? There are times when some relationships are not repairable. For example, maybe you've been meeting to have that talk with a parent about something that was really important, but the parent then passes away before you have a chance to do so. You can't repair things. Only a one-sided repair. Or maybe you have a friendship and you reach out and that person simply chooses silence. They've made the decision for you. Or, very common, the other person has moved on completely. In fact, they probably have forgotten about the thing that has been bugging you all this time. Now, it doesn't mean that these losses are not real. They are. They can't be explained away. You could tell yourself everything happens for a reason, but it doesn't really resolve your feelings. But like the pottery, I think the most healthy thing to do is acknowledge it and then move on. It's part of your history. It's part of your life. You carry the fragments going forward. Now, when I was here a number of years ago, I gave a sermon all about forgiveness. And it was called Old and Wise. And it refers to a song, again with the music angle, the song by a band called the Alan Parsons Project. And in it, it's about a man at the end of his life, on his deathbed, and a person he's had a conflict with is asking him, can we come to a reconciliation? And the man says, if anyone asks, just tell them that you are my friend. In other words, let bygones be bygones. The thing is, the lesson to be learned out of that is you shouldn't have to wait till it's too late to come to reconciliation. Most of the scenarios I described to you, siblings, parents, friends, at some point, some major event happens in your life which causes one of you to reach out. And then you almost inevitably wonder, why did we have this long break? And sometimes it is too late. But know as well that when you reach out, it's not perfect. Again, it takes time, like fixing that ceramic bowl. It's not one crack, it's many cracks. And it takes one at a time to repair them. Now, for those of you who observe Lent, this coming Wednesday is Ash Wednesday, the beginning of 40 days of Lent. And related to don't wait till it's too late, the saying at Lent is ashes to ashes, dust to dust. So you don't have to practice Lent to understand it. If something in your life needs tending, which is what we're going to be talking about myself next week, it's best to tend it now, not when it gets too late. So I'll kind of conclude by inviting you to do the following. This coming week, in your own life, consider one of these breaks, one of these fragments of pottery in your life that's broken. It might be a name in your contact list, the one you scroll by. Maybe it's a conversation you've been rehearsing. You've even written down notes, but you never actually have it or the silence that's been sitting there that you think is resolution, but it's not. And look at that break in your relationship and ask yourself the following: is there gold here? If I painted it, would it be gold and would it be repaired? If the answer is yes, then you know what to do next. Reach out. Truly say I'm sorry, not performatively, and try and mend. If the answer is no, there will be no gold in this repaired ceramics, then that's worth knowing as well. It means set it down and move on. Now, related to this topic and the principles that Beth shared, what I'm just describing to you here, the practice of repair, aligns very much, in my opinion, at the heart of the UU principles. You know, we covenant to affirm that there's inherent worth and dignity in every person. That includes people who've hurt us or who we've hurt. That's a difficult one to reconcile, but it's true. Secondly, congregational life, fellowship life, is a practice. It means that is you have to nurture a relationship over time. And finally, a free and responsible search for truth means we all have to look honestly at our own failings and address them. Otherwise, they just sit there as something broken. So I'll wrap up by saying the following. I'll put on my professor hat now, give you my lessons learned. What repair requires, true repair? It is an honesty over excuse. The willingness to be wrong sometimes. Now, I would say as well, on the flyer I gave you, on the bottom part of that Madonna, there's a couple of questions for reflection for you. And that is one of those questions. You can consider them at your leisure this week. Know that you need to know what it costs. It costs maybe your self-image. You're giving up what might be a comfortable distance for something that is, in the moment, uncomfortable to come to resolution. But it offers something that's invaluable, which is closure. And hopefully, something that's repaired with gold. That makes things better. When repair is impossible, acknowledge the fragments, grieve what you've lost, go forward. Don't keep sitting and dwelling on it. It doesn't require infinite preparation. It doesn't require perfection. It doesn't require script. It just requires honesty. It requires you stepping up and speaking. So I would say to close to you, I hope you have the courage to pick up one of these fragments in your life this week. And I hope the mending is honest and fruitful. And I hope you realize that for most of these relationships, there's gold. It's in your hands. You just have to realize it's there.